Hello booktubers, my name is Lauren, you're watching Dreams Books Courage, and usually this would be a Top 5 Wednesday video, but this week's Top 5 Wednesday was Top 5 Books of 2014, and so I didn't really want to narrow it down to just 5 books because I've read so many amazing books this year. So today I'm actually going to be doing my top 14 books of 2014 instead of my usual Top 5 Wednesday. And so this year I completed a total of 76 books, which is awesome for me. I only really got back into reading last year, so the fact that I've read 76 books this year is just awesome. I know most people just do one book for each number, but for me I'm going to be doing my series and trilogies that also make the list along with standalones. I have read all of these series and trilogies this year, but I didn't really think it'd be fair to just pick one book out of the series. So for the series and trilogies, I'm just going to be showing you all of the books of that series. And so the book in the number 14 spot is Dash and Lily's Book of Dares by Rachel Cohn and David Levithan. I read this book at the start of summer right before I went to New York City because I know this takes place in New York City and specifically in the Strand bookstore. And this book really took me all over NYC, just to random places, as Dash and Lily were completing each other's dares. I love this book. I gave it a 5 out of 5, and it's just a wonderful combination of romance and winter in New York City, and I love all of those things, especially since a lot of it took place in a bookstore. In my number 13 spot is a duology, and it is If I Stay and Where She Went, both by Gail Forman. And I read these books in anticipation of the If I Stay movie, which was amazing, but these books are even better. Personally, I liked Where She Went even better than If I Stay, just because I felt like it dealt with more romantic aspects of Adam and Mia's relationship, and also because it took place in New York City, a city which obviously I love. I gave all of the books in my top 14 5 stars, of course. Gail Forman is just an amazing writer. I love Adam and Mia's relationship, and I also love Mia and Adam's love for music and just everything musical that goes within these books. In my number 12 spot is actually an audiobook that I read this year, and it is Everyone Hanging Out Without Me and Other Concerns by Mindy Kaling. I absolutely adore this audiobook. Mindy Kaling is a comedy writer, and she also stars in some comedy shows like The Office and The Mindy Project. And just hearing about Mindy Kaling's stories were just so hilarious. I felt like they were really relatable, and so I really enjoyed reading this on audiobook, especially because it was read by Mindy Kaling herself. She did have quite a lot of advice to offer, but also she just had a lot of funny, embarrassing stories, and I just really enjoyed laughing along while reading this. Next up is actually the last book I read in the year of 2014, and it is Landline by Rainbow Rowell. This is actually my first Rainbow Rowell novel, and it's actually her only adult novel that she has released so far, but I really enjoyed reading this story. It was all about marriage and love and kids, but it was told in such a beautiful way. Although a lot of parts were heartbreaking, you just kind of knew that the love went so much deeper than those sad parts within this novel. And I just love her stories of how her and her husband met, and her stories about her kids, and just all of it just seems so real. And although this is supposed to be about a time apart from a wife and her husband, it actually seemed more like a love story because of all the stories she told and just how adorable those stories really were. In my 10th place spot is a classic that I do not own, but it is Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. I love reading dystopian novels, and this was definitely one of the front runners for whenever dystopian really became its own thing. This tells about a world, and how they are really controlled is through drugs that they take every day. And within this society, there isn't really things such as love or marriage or boyfriends. Things like that don't really exist, and these people are just controlled by drugs and no morality. Within a lot of dystopians, we see all of this control and so much control over everyone's lives. But within this novel, we can also see that a lack of control can also cause a dystopian world. This novel really made me think critically about dystopian novels and whether we can really consider all dystopians dystopians and not utopians. Because I'm sure for a lot of people within that world, they do think it's a utopian. It's quite a complex topic, and I just really enjoyed reading this classic because it wasn't boring like some classics are. It was a really interesting and intriguing environment, and I have not read any book like this. In the number 9 spot is The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini, and I'm sure a lot of you guys know how much I adore this book. It's heartbreaking and at the same time just wonderful, and it's beautifully written, and it really tells a different story unlike any I've heard before. This is the story of Amir and Hassan growing up, and whenever something horrible happens to Hassan and Amir can't really face it, it just kind of ruins Amir's life and also Hassan's life at the same time. Amir has to deal with this guilt throughout his lifetime, and it eventually leads to him becoming good again. It's just such an interesting spin on the story of Afghanistan that most of us know. because we're actually hearing it from an Afghan side. I keep coming back to this book within my mind because the story is just such a powerful novel. Next up we have Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn, and this novel was so intense for me, but I really enjoyed reading it. I love Gillian Flynn's writing style, and although her characters might be horrible people, they are very complex people as well, and I really enjoyed that about this book. I was entertained the entire time, and I just didn't know what was going to happen next. It was just such a powerful novel for me to read. I'm not really into reading thriller sort of books, but this one was definitely an exception because it was so beautifully written and the story was just such a powerful one. Next I have Looking for Alaska by John Green. It was a really interesting story, and I know that a lot of this has been based upon John Green's own experience within boarding school, and so that just made it even more interesting. Stories about boarding schools are just so intriguing to me, and this was definitely no exception. John Green is my favorite author of all time, as most of you guys know, and so it's just amazing that Looking for Alaska was his first novel, because it was just such a powerful one, and it dealt with sad topics, but I felt like there were definitely meaningful topics, especially within the young adult world. Although the characters within this novel did not always make the best of choices, they were definitely very interesting and complex. In the 6th place spot is actually a series, and it is the Heroes of Olympus series by Rick Riordan. I've read the series over the past 2 months, and it is just amazing, and I keep thinking back to the series, and I just want more of this world. I've been with Percy and Annabeth for such a long time, and just seeing this story end was quite a bittersweet feeling, but I just really enjoyed this series even more than Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Rick Riordan has just taught me so much about Greek and Roman mythology, and I just want to learn more after delving into these novels. Every chapter seems like its own new adventure, and I just love being enraptured in his novels. Now we're down to the top 5 of 2014, and in the 5th place spot we have yet another trilogy sort of thing, although these might be just considered companion novels. And it is the Anna and the French Kiss trilogy sort of thing by Stephanie Perkins. The other 2 books in the trilogy are, of course, Lola and the Boy Next Door, and of course, Isla and the Happily Ever After. And Isla is actually my favorite of the 3. These books just tell such romantic and adorable stories, and I just love reading them and falling in love with these characters just as they fall in love with each other. And the beautiful places that Stephanie Perkins takes us, like Paris and California and New York, just amazing and beautiful places, and some of the most romantic places in the world. So I just really love the series, and I wish there were going to be more books in the series just because I love them so much. But these books all told such powerful love stories that I could just read over and over again. In the 4th place spot we have the Selection Trilogy by Kira Cass, which also includes of course The Elite and The One, and I just love all 3 of these books. Although you probably can't tell by the covers, this is actually a dystopian trilogy, and it feels like a dystopian meets The Bachelor, and I just love everything about these books. And America and Prince Maxon and Aspen are just wonderful characters that I really enjoy reading about. And I'm even more excited that Kira Cass is actually going to come out with a companion series to these 3 books because I just want this series to go on. I really enjoyed reading this dystopian trilogy, and it was definitely unlike any I've read before. In the 3rd place spot we have the Vampire Academy series by Rochelle Mead. These books tell such a powerful story about vampires, and just the complexities in this world are unlike any other vampire world I've seen before. The relationship between Rose and Dimitri is amazing, especially with all they go through, which is crazy. And also the relationship between Rose and Melissa is also equally amazing because their friendship is just such a strong one. And it's definitely stronger than most, especially considering what they have to go through. Rose is just such a kick-butt character, and she's also so witty, and then she has super sweet Lissa by her side, and her amazing boyfriend Dimitri, and these characters are all just so complex and awesome. And some of the things they go through, which are super stressful, and the series just took me to places I did not even expect it to. Overall, I thought this was just an amazing fantasy series, and I can't wait to read the Bloodline series as well. In my 2nd place spot is the Mortal Instruments series by Cassandra Clare. I read this entire series within this year, and also the Infernal Devices trilogy, but I picked this series over the Infernal Devices trilogy just because I felt more connected to these characters. The Shadowhunter world is just filled with so many fantasy elements and so many fantasy creatures as well, and it's just such an interesting series, especially with the Shadowhunters. This year, the conclusion to this series, City of Heavenly Fire, actually came out, and it was just the perfect combination of characters from the Mortal Instrument series and also the Infernal Devices trilogy. It was heartbreaking and just such a beautiful story, and I love the adventures that Cassandra Clare creates for these characters because there are definitely a lot of plot twists within this entire series, and they're all really amazing and beautifully portrayed. And I think you guys all know what my #1 book / series is of this year. Of course, it is the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. And obviously this is not the entire series at this time. There's still 3 more books in the series that have not come out yet, but from the 4 books that I have read of the series, I just completely love them and I devoured all of these books. I think all of you guys should just go get this book because it is just such an amazing book, such an amazing series. These characters are very complex and their stories just intertwine in ways in which you never thought they would. And there are always just new characters coming up within these stories, and they just make the story even more complex and more beautiful. I love Sarah J. Maas's writing and her characters and the plots that she creates, and I'm just so excited for the next book in the series to come out. This series is my #1 for 2014 because it has stuck with me so well, and I just really want to go back into this world every time I look at my books because it is just such a powerful fantasy world. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and thank you for being a part of what made my 2014 just such an amazing year for me. This year I've started my booktube channel and I'm definitely going to be continuing it in the new year, and I have over 650 subscribers now, and that is just crazy to me and it's so amazing, and I just want to thank every single one of you personally for just subscribing to me and just enjoying what I'm talking about and being able to talk to me about it as well. I would love to know down below what your favorite book of 2014 was, and I hope you all have been having happy holidays and I hope you have a happy new year. I'm gonna go get back to reading.